Could you imagine being born without any limbs? How many have seen Nick Vujicic? He's been at Kingdom Bound. You know, although we might not have the same health issues that he has, I would submit to you that we're all going to have health issues at some point in time. Some way, shape, or form. We're going to have health issues that are going to threaten to handicap us. How we view life, how we do life. It might be acute, it might be an illness, it might be an accident, it might be chronic, it might be obesity, it might be arthritis. But we're all going to have to deal with this whole business as far as loss of health in some way, shape, or form. And that, when we get into that type of a loss, we're going to grieve. As a matter of fact, that's what grief is all about. Grief, according to this message series, is just the feelings and the thoughts associated with loss. So, in this place where we're dealing with health and we lose our health, what do you do? What do you do? How do you deal with that? I know for myself, it was about 10 years ago when I really started to lose the ability to run. I used to love to run. Not necessarily running in and of itself. I wasn't really into that. But I loved the runner's high, and I loved the way I felt after a run. Right, Jimmy? Yeah, you're feeling it, man. It's just awesome. Absolutely awesome. Because you're relaxed and all the anxieties and the tensions just kind of melt away. But with arthritis in my hip and also in my back, that didn't allow me to run anymore. And so I was handicapped. I was having difficulty trying to figure that out. And my loss of health resulted in two things. It resulted in a loss of activity. I couldn't run like I used to. And the loss of activity promoted a loss of hope. You don't have the serotonin, you don't have the endorphins flowing, you don't have that runner's high, you don't have it. And it's not only in running, it's anything. When we're handicapped, we lose the ability to be active in that particular way. When we lose the ability to be active, then we start to lose hope. We start to get to this place where we lose hope. And the loss of hope turns back to the loss of activity. And the loss of activity feeds back into the loss of hope, and you cycle down and down and down and down to the point in which you start to wonder, does God really care? Does he care? Is he concerned about me? You know, sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot. How many of you have had a potato chip dinner? Bag of potato chips, you know? Yeah, all the guys are, yep, that's me. I used to do that quite often. I mean, we get to the place where we just shoot ourselves in the foot as far as the way we do life. It degrades our ability to continue to be active and everything like that. But what happens when the time comes that out of the blue, something happens, whether it's an accident or whether it's illness or whether it's arthritis or what have you? What happens when we get presented with a loss of health? We got to answer a question. And the question is, why would a loving God let loss of health happen? Why would he allow that to happen to me? Now, for 30 some odd years, I've been paging through the Bible, and I'm not saying it's an exhaustive list by any stretch, but I offer to you 3 reasons why God would allow a loss of health to happen. The first reason involves personal growth. God will allow us to have a loss of health in order to promote or raise personal growth. Growth in 2 ways. The first one would be knowledge. Now, when you think of the Bible and you think of suffering, is there a particular man who comes to mind? Job, right. There we go. So let's go to Job to kind of get an idea as far as the loss of health in order to help us to understand a little bit better as far as personal growth. Now, Job's a big book. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at 3 different passages in Job to allow us to come to a little bit of an understanding. First passage I want to take you to is Job 2:7. So Satan went out from the presence of God and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. So here we have Satan in the presence of God, goes out, they talk, God allows Satan to afflict Job with boils all over his body. Now, this is in addition to the loss of his family, in addition to the loss of all his possessions. So Job is destitute, and he's got boils all over his body, okay? He's having a bad day, to say the least. So his friends come, synopsis of the book real quick. They go through about 35, 40 chapters of arguing with one another as far as why God would allow this to happen. Job's getting to the point where he's going, you know what? I wanted to talk to God by myself. I want to go and meet him face to face and talk this whole thing out because he's really messing me up with what he's doing here. So Job gets his wish. We pick it up there. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. Brace yourself like a man. I will question you. You will answer me. Would you discredit my justice? Would you condemn me to justify yourself? God is basically saying to Job, dude, you're throwing me under the bus because you don't like the way your life's going. Now, Job comes to an epiphany. And the epiphany is along the lines of, you know what? I don't know everything that's going on as far as how God deals with everything. We can see it here. Then Job replied to the Lord, I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. You asked, who is this that obscures my plans without knowledge? Surely I spoke things that I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. Job came to the understanding, here's where the growth took place. He came to the understanding, he really doesn't know it all. He doesn't know all the things, all the machinations that are going on as far as God, all the switching levers and everything that he has to pull and move and do in order to make life happen. Life is a gift. Doesn't come with all the trimmings as far as that goes. Life is a gift. And Job came to realize and understand that. So God allowed that to take place for his personal growth. The second way that we grow personally is independence. God allowed one of his best servants, the Apostle Paul, to get to this place where he was afflicted by a thorn in the flesh in order for him to gain an understanding as far as dependence. Let's read about that. It's in the second letter to the Corinthians. Paul writes, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. So Paul comes to understand that God will allow him to go through some difficulties as far as health is concerned. What a thorn in the flesh is, I don't have a foggy clue. Some have said epilepsy, some others say eye issues, some said emotional issues. I don't know. But God allowed something to take place that Paul wasn't really feeling because he went to God 3 times. And God said, you know what? You can deal with it. My grace is sufficient for you. Paul came to the place where he came to a greater understanding of his dependence on God. Now, that being said, God must value growth in a big way. Reason being, God rolls dice every time that he allows people and their health issues to take place. When he allows somebody to have poor health, they're either going to go one of 2 ways. They're either going to go towards God or they're going to go away from God, one or the other. So the first reason why God would place us in this position or allow us to be placed in this position where we lose health, we are handicapped, is in order for us to personally grow. All right? The second would be guidance towards him. A guy by the name of Naaman came to understand God, Yahweh, being overall by his leprosy. Let's read in 2 Kings. Now, Naaman was the commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded because through him, the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. So Naaman went out with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elijah's house. Elijah was this great prophet in Israel. Elijah sent a messenger to say to him, "Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan," that's the Jordan River, "and your flesh will be restored and you will be cleansed." But Naaman went away angry and said, "I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. Is not Abana or Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters in Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed?" So he turned and he went off in a rage. Naaman's servants went to him and said, "Father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed?" So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times as the man of God had told him. And his flesh was restored and became clean like that of a young boy. Then Naaman and all of his attendants went back to the man of God. He stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. So please accept a gift from your servant." God allowed Naaman to have leprosy in order for Naaman to be guided to God. That's number 2 reason. Number 3 reason involves glory. Glory. And we can come to understand this reason by Jesus' response to his disciples' question. In the book of John, 9th chapter, as he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" "Neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus, "but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him." So here we have the glory of God, the works of God being displayed in somebody who has been blind. Now, when I've thought about it, I've thought that the works of God are displayed really in 2 ways: enduring and curing. Like Nick Vujicic said, when God gives grace for somebody who is afflicted with something like being born limbless, and he's able to endure that, that gives glory to God, does it not? When you don't have a miracle, you can be a miracle, right? That's what he said. But then, on the other hand, God allows these crazy things to happen where somebody gets cured. Here we have 3 reasons. 3 reasons why God allows people not to have all the health that they might want. And the first one would be the growth, then guidance, and then the idea of glory, glorifying him, God. But I don't know about you, but every time that I'm calling out to God for a cure, he doesn't necessarily answer along the lines of a cure. So, does he hear me? Does he respond with healing? Well, how does he go about this idea of healing and hearing? And that's really the thing that we need to try to get our minds around. So I offer to you, with that in mind, 4 adverbs that describe how God hears and how he heals. The first one is spiritually. When you think about it, God works on 2 planes as far as healing. One is the physical. We see that. Somebody's got a Joe Theismann leg that kind of goes off and to the left, and it gets healed. Okay? God heals physically, but he also heals spiritually, bringing somebody to the place where they come to recognize him as God and desire to follow him. And one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that many times God will trade a physical healing for a spiritual healing every day of the week. It's trading a wiener for a ham. The reason being is because a physical healing is temporary healing. A spiritual healing can be for an eternity. The Apostle Paul works on this plane with his advice to the Corinthian church. Hand this man over. This man was the man who was caught in an incestuous relationship with his stepmother, okay? Just to give you context of what was going on. So the Apostle Paul is telling the Corinthian, or advising the Corinthian church to hand this man over to Satan for the destruction of the flesh. Satan wants to destroy us, okay? So Paul is saying, don't pray for this guy just yet. He wants to destroy. We'll let Satan work on him for a while, so that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord. So there's times when God will allow us to go through some difficult things in order for us to be spiritually healed. It's the first one. The second one involves the idea of surgically. There are times when God heals with his own hand. And then there's other times when God heals with somebody else's hand. A doctor's or somebody else who might help. Guy who came to recognize this was a guy by the name of Hezekiah. Hezekiah was a king in Judah. Let's read his story. In those days, Hezekiah became ill and was at the point of death. The prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz, went to him and said, "This is what the Lord says, put your house in order because you're going to die. You will not recover." Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord, "Remember, Lord, how I have walked before you faithfully and with wholehearted devotion and have done what is good in your eyes." And Hezekiah wept bitterly. Before Isaiah had left the middle court, the word of the Lord came back to him. "Go back and tell Hezekiah, the ruler of my people, this is what the Lord, the God of your father David says. I've heard your prayer and seen your tears, and I will heal you. And on the third day from now, you will go up to the temple of the Lord, and I will add 15 years to your life, and I will deliver you and this city from the hand of the king of Assyria. I will defend this city for my sake and for the sake of my servant David." Now, this is the important thing. Then Hezekiah said, "Prepare a poultice of figs." They did so and applied it to the boil, and he recovered. So, what was going on was Hezekiah had a boil. There was an infection. It was starting to come out, but rather than God going, to Isaiah, just put your hand over and heal him, lay your hands on him and heal him. What took place is God told Isaiah to have a poultice of figs created or developed, put it on the boil, and the boil will then be lanced and what have you. He used a particular hand of a particular doctor to do that. There's times when God uses doctors to do that. Okay? There's a third adverb that we like to use, and that is supernaturally. God supernaturally heals. He uses his own hand. But when we think about supernatural healing, we often get to the place where we go, how much faith do I need in order to have a supernatural healing? And I would offer to you that rather than quantitatively trying to figure out how much faith I need, I think God's looking for the existence of faith rather than a quantitative amount of faith. I can't conjure up any more faith than I got. We can see this with Jairus, the synagogue ruler. Let's just read it and I'll comment on it. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed." So here you have Jairus. Jesus is in Capernaum at this point in time. And you have Jairus. He's the guy, he's the kingpin as far as the synagogue guy. But his daughter is sicker than a dog. She's on death's doorstep. So Jairus comes to Jesus in faith. "Heal my daughter, would you please?" And Jesus gets to the place, "Yeah, I can do that. Okay, come on, we can do that." And he starts on the way to Jairus' house, okay? But the problem is that Jesus gets interrupted in going to Jairus' house. And then some of Jairus' servants come to Jesus and Jairus with some bad news. We'll pick it up there. While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead." They said, "Why bother to teach her anymore?" So here you have these servants that come to Jairus and Jesus. And Jairus, can you imagine being Jairus? You're so close. You're so close. Probably the little girl is sick for some time. And you hear about this healing rabbi who's got miraculous powers. He's in Capernaum right now. I know that if I can just get my hands on this guy and bring him so he gets his hands on my daughter, she'll be healed. I know that. And he gets so close to it, and Jesus gets waylaid and no healing takes place. She dies. So now all hope is gone. All hope is lost. But Jesus goes, whoa. Just believe. Just have faith. Chill, dude. We can do it. So Jesus goes with Jairus to Jairus' house, and he goes to the daughter's room in Jairus' house. We'll pick it up there. He took her by the hand and said to her, Talitha, my Hebrew's not that good, cum, which means, little girl, I say to you, get up. Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old, and at this they were completely astonished. It wasn't the amount of faith, it was the existence of faith that Jesus was looking for. So Jesus healed supernaturally. The last adverb I'd like to offer to you is God hears and heals sovereignly. If you get nothing else, get this one, because this is a biggie. God heals on his time frame, not on ours. And that's where time is a trainer. Because we're in this time warp, we think along the lines of, well, it's got to be done. We're thinking Burger King thinking, right? My way, right away, Burger King now, right? No? You're not feeling it, Deb? No? All right. Don't go to Debbie's Burger King. Disclaimer. We can see in this passage why Jesus was waylaid in going to Jairus' house. Let's read about it. So Jesus went with him. That was Jairus. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I'll be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body she was freed from her suffering. The woman had gone to doctors, spent all of her money. 12 years she had this. 12 years of bleeding. It's a long time. I'm sure she did plenty of praying. I'm sure she did. God chose to not heal her through the doctors because God knew that his son was going to be there 12 years later. And that's what God chose to do. He exercised his sovereignty in the time frame element. And this just brings us to what Martin Luther said. God always answers prayers. It's either yes, no, or not yet. Yes, no, or not yet. The challenge that we have is trying to continue in faith when we haven't gotten that answer yet. I want to offer to you a disclaimer at this point, because I offer a presentation and I give some reasons why I think God would allow lack of health or handicaps to take place. I don't want you to start to think that we can figure it all out, because frankly, there's times I really honestly don't know. I've talked about my friend trying to battle cancer in faith that God's going to heal him. And we were close to losing him a couple weeks ago. So the best thing that I can offer to you is this regarding healing, is that when you've got good health, be thankful to God. Thank God for your health, because that's a gift from him. But when you don't have health, trust in him. I don't know how he's going to work. I really honestly don't know how he's going to work. But hang on to the trust in him, because I know he is trustworthy. I know he's faithful. I know he is a loving God who wants the best for his people. That I know. I don't always know what's best for his people. Straight up honest, I don't know that. I wish I did. I wish I could comfort people in a better way who are having difficulty as far as their health. But I don't have all those answers. God keeps some of those answers really close to the vest. So trust him when you don't have health. That's all I can tell you. Trust him. He is trustworthy. Father, this business of health is difficult. I guess we're people who desire to try to figure it out, to have it plain, simple, but many times you have very, very deep and challenging things that you work out in our personality, in our lives, through health. I pray for those who are going through difficulties right now. I pray that they might continue to trust in you, that your grace might be sufficient for them. I pray for growth for those who need to grow. I pray for guidance for those who need guidance. I pray for your glory to be exhibited in the lives of those who you desire. But Lord, I pray that we might be able to just roll with the punches when the punches get pretty hard as far as health is concerned. And I pray for each and every one that is here today, and even those who are not, who might be suffering from a lack of health. I pray and ask that your hand would be upon them, to help them to endure in the midst of not knowing all the answers, and to gain a better grasp on your goodness and your love, even when it's not necessarily apparent. I pray that your Spirit might just attend to each one, trusting you for it, allowing them to come to understand that you are trustworthy and you are gracious. It's in the name of Jesus I pray. Amen.